Much as we expect it to perform specific role in terms of development and transformation, this is also a contested social space. And I'll conclude with some reflections on the role of wage labor in the context of development, particularly given the fact that wage labor is in the decline across the globe. So the focus of this presentation is on the vexing issue on the role of higher education in development and transformation. And in this presentation, I seek to underscore two issues. First, that education, and higher education in particular, is crucial for successful development trajectories of modern societies. And secondly, is to highlight that because higher education is a contested social space, its role in development and transformation is not unproblematic. Because sometimes of this tendency of over-romanticizing higher education as if there are no problems there that stand on the way of this ideal of transforming and developing society. So in terms of the role of education in general, I think it's generally accepted that education comprises different disciplines and operates at different levels. I think this was the shortest definition.
So today we're going to run through the quick and easy setup I have on my point-to-point network using Arrow S and Ubiquitous.
Lower schools go to high schools, we go to tertiary institutions, which Nelson Mandela University is. So for you to understand education, you have got to have an appreciation that is a system that operates at different levels. And for you to appreciate its role in development, you can't just focus on higher education, but you must focus.
So today we're going to run through the quick and easy setup.
And in general, education has played an important role in development and transformation of societies, including in the global south recently. We know the Asian tigers, the Singapores, the South Koreans, and Taiwan, and many others, Hong Kong. And the most important thing that I'm emphasizing here is that I may not give you specific cases, because you know that society generally, since the Industrial Revolution, it has built itself.
So today we're going to run through the quick and easy setup.
And in general, education has played an important role. You know where the car comes from in development and transformation of societies to become. Including in the global south recently, we know the Asian tigers, the Singapore. It didn't just start as a cell phone, it started somewhere. It has always evolved, and the most important thing that I'm emphasizing in the modern society, I may not give you specific guarantee that after some few years, because you know that society generally form and character. So that is a general point that we are all aware of, that history has always developed on the basis of innovation and research, which basically encompasses education. Even in today's world, it's generally accepted that investment in education in all levels, primary, high schools, and institutions of higher learning, is necessary for development in the modern era. And this is not a rhetorical statement or sloganeering. We know that countries which have invested in education over a period of time, they are doing relatively better in terms of their development outcomes. And those who have not invested in education, we know the challenges that they face. And we know that within the development discourse in South Africa, there is this concept of education as an apex priority. Whether that is indeed true, in reality is something else. But at least in the policy documents of the South African state, there is this emphasis on education as a priority apex. And of course, people have got different assumptions about what should exactly be the role of education. Others see it as another form of, some form of occupational citizenship, where people just go to school, not necessarily with an expectation that they will find a job, but they just go to school in order to gain the necessary knowledge, but not necessarily to get jobs. But however, South Africa's development ideology is that of thinking that you go to school in order to get a job. And you'll see as I speak about the role of higher education, that's one perspective, or one theoretical perspective within the broader ideological perspective on what should be the role of higher education. And we know that even if you go to the UN, you go to these multilateral institutions, there's always emphasis on education. All countries are under pressure to invest in education. So it has become a necessary thing. But whether really indeed it delivers the desired outcomes of people going to school and then ultimately they find the wage jobs is something else. So now we're moving to the role of higher education in development and transformation. As I've said, education operates in different levels. It is at the level of higher education where groundbreaking research and innovation is produced, or knowledge is produced. Because institutions of higher learning, remember, they are not the same. If you go to TVET colleges and compare the research output with the universities, you'll see that there is a lesser research output with TVET colleges. But universities and specialized colleges, you'll find that they have this focus on coming with new ideas, finding solutions to problems, and trying to come with new ideas on some of the problems that are faced by society. But what exactly is the purpose of higher education, particularly in the context of the discussion that we're having on development and transformation? So Dr. Jeffrey Mabelebele of HISA, that is Higher Education South Africa, suggests multiple purposes. So the first is that institutions of higher learning, they produce knowledge. So that is the most basic. I mean, when you think about universities, when you think about higher education, we generally think about their role in generating knowledge. So higher education problematizes accepted knowledge and demonstrates its limits and possibilities. So it's an ongoing process of trying to find solutions to problems at the theoretical level and also at the practical level, but at the same time generating knowledge. And after that knowledge is generated, it gets contested, it gets revised, it gets refuted. Those who can revise, they can do so. Those who refute it completely, they can do so. So that's one perspective about the role of higher education. And the one it says is a place for battle of ideas, and this is a perspective that is advanced largely by Castells, a leading sociologist. He says that universities or institutes of higher learning are places of battle of ideas. So these are ideological apparatuses expressing the ideological struggles of in all societies. So because the question of how society must be organized also remains very contested. There are those who believe that the markets must rule, and there are those who believe that the markets must be embedded in society. That means that there are those who say, let free market reign, and there are those who say, let the society be reigned, and don't allow markets to determine how life must be organized. So within institutions of higher learning, there's that battle of ideas around how society must be organized. So it's an ideological struggle. And there's this popular one, which is about educating and training of skilled, educated workforce. This is a popular one. That says the role of universities and colleges and all institutes of higher learning is just simply to produce a workforce for the industry. So you go to school in order to get a job, as I've said earlier on. So this is one perspective. And some believe that this is crucial because in order for you to develop as a society, you need a trained and properly skilled workforce. I'm sure most of you are aware of the current, whether it's real or not, the outcry by the state that we don't have certain skills in certain categories of work. And they see higher education as a vehicle to help find solutions to that problem of skilling people in order for them to be in wage formal jobs. And of course, and Castells also speaks about selection and socialization of elites. So basically what he says is that us seated here, because most of us are in different institutions of higher learning, when we're in university and we're in colleges, we are basically in a process of being selected to be dominant elites, to be separated from the many people who could not gain access into institutions of higher learning. And also, because we gain that knowledge, we tend to perpetuate inequality because of the skills that we get, because also we begin to do the othering, that there are others who are not educated and there's us who are educated. And in that process, there is this problem of social stratification where we see ourselves as much better than others, and we regard ourselves, whether consciously or subconsciously, as the elites. And others see it as an instrument for social and cultural transformation, so higher education as an agent of change. So we know that institutes of higher learning, they've really played a major role in fighting injustices in different contexts, in different parts of the country. Where there have been dictatorships, institutes of higher learning, they've risen up, papers have been produced to question certain issues. But at the same time, it can be used regressively in a way of institutes of higher learning coming with specific ideologies that further divides the people. A classic example can be in apartheid, because apartheid was it can't be denied that institutes of higher learning had a role in its development, in justifying it, and also making sure that it thrives, supporting it over the years. So it can work either way. It's not necessarily that in playing this role is unilateral one way of doing it. So lastly, I just want to speak about higher education as a contested space. I think there are problems in higher education. I was in the student movement 5 years ago, and these are some of the problems that still continue today. And the first is that the pedagogy in higher education remains deeply untransformed, undemocratic, and non-dialogical. So by this, I mean the method of teaching remains that of a receiver of knowledge and someone who believes that they've got all the knowledge. So you've got lecturers who sit, who stand in lecture halls, and they see themselves as depositors of knowledge to passive learners. So explain certain things the way they see them, but that is not allowed. And of course, there are punishments. If you don't follow what the lecturer says, you know that you may not be able to pass that test or to even graduate, or ultimately even dropping out of the institution. So the pedagogy remains highly untransformed, and it's a problem. And there's also a pitfall of narrow scholasticism, where ideas are developed and engaged but never translated to ordinary people. So you become armchair, scholars who produce lots of knowledge, but this knowledge can be shared with people for them to make sense of it on how does it help them to develop their own localities and also deal with some of their problems. So conferences are organized, which is a very good thing. Conferences are organized to present papers, we talk to each other, we publish in academic journals, we talk to a very small group of people, but we don't really translate that knowledge to the ordinary people in South Africa. So I think that's another problem, because lots of knowledge, I can tell you, is there, whether it's in health sciences, whether it's in engineering, agriculture, there's so much that is happening, and some of it can help people who are excluded. But that remains in the library shelves in our institutes of higher learning. And also, education can also serve narrow regressive political ends, which can negate their role in advancing social transformation. And higher education, as we know, it has become a bastion of social injustice. We know of cases of rape, of the rape culture, the continuing racism, chauvinism, homophobia, destruction of social infrastructure, particularly during protests. So you can go all out there as social beings in higher education and condemn, but there are problems that are happening out in society which are also happening in institutes of higher learning. And I think with the very impressive rise of the fees must fall and the students organizing outside traditional student movements, these things have really come out very strongly, and they are being challenged at the same time. But at the same time, I want to suggest that there is a problem of higher education in the global south. Of course, this is changing, where knowledge is seen to be produced in the north, or rather